So before we get to Trey, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
You commit crimes, you go to jail. Doesn't matter what your race is, what your ethnicity, religion. But demonizing the entire group of people by their race and their ethnicity is something I was hoping we'd never have to see.
Well, why don't you straighten out your own state first? Bigger than anyone thought. The Minnesota billionaire social services scam is spiraling in the wrong direction for Governor Walz, for the Attorney General, and for Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has one of her staffers implicated in it, and a restaurant owner who hosts her events right in the middle of it. We have that story that most of the media is ignoring.
Number 2.
This issue raises what really is a classic in the literature about use of force. And there's extensive discussion by lawyers, thoughtful people at the time about what morality requires you to do in wartime. That kind of debate is what we need to be having now. And instead, it's beginning to be the usual sharp disagreement between Republicans and Democrats.
Drug boat bombing explained off the coast of Venezuela, as Dems foolishly, in my opinion, just won't let it go. We bring you the post-game briefing that should have answered all the questions.
Number 1.
Now, Trump's economic plans has always been very, very simple. Cut taxes, cut regulation, and make energy cheaper. The one thing he can't do on this tour is tell people things are great for them when they're not.
That is true, and he's overstating it when he says it's a hoax. What he's saying is the Democrats claiming that his administration made things unaffordable. That's the hoax, but he's got to clarify that, which I think he's going to do. Game plans hatched for Dems and Republicans. The buzzword affordability is embraced by both sides. The country is unaffordable to agree but guess who caused it? Democrats and the GOP in a race to fix it. Like it or not, fair or unfair, it's on their report card. And a guy who knows that, fair and unfair, he's a black and white guy, Trey Gowdy, former chairman of House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, host of Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy. I'm honored to follow him at 10 o'clock on Sundays. He begins at 9, author of The Color of Death, which is a novel and a great Christmas gift. Trey, welcome back.
Hey, Brian, I am nothing but the setup man for the closer on Sunday nights. Brian killed me.
No, you are the number one ratings on Sundays. So listen, I got to bring you to the affordability. You know life isn't fair. And you know what I said is probably true, that Democrats are more responsible for the prices, obviously, than Republicans. But they're going to get blamed. If I gave you that huddle and I said, you're the quarterback, Trey, fix it, walk into that huddle and tell me what you would tell the other Republicans.
Let people know that you feel their pain, because at a certain point, we're past who's to blame for it. We just know that we're hurting. So I would tell them, look, you got to deliver the message, but how you communicate matters. And it really does impact people when you listen and say, I feel your pain. I mean, I run into young people all the time, Brian, and they're worried about the cost of health insurance. It's not a political issue to them. It's a bottom line issue. So I don't want to say the facade of empathy, because it's not a facade. I think many Republicans, including the president, very much understand that people are experiencing pain. Let them know that you hear them. Let them know that you feel it, and then tell them what your plan is. People, look, Americans are not known for their patience. I think in April, when the tax bill comes due, they'll have a renewed appreciation for what Republicans have done. We just have never been great at communicating empathy and sympathy. And that's what I would tell the folks. Number one, quit fighting with one another in the House, because you look like idiots. Number two, let people know you feel their pain and you have a plan to fix it.
I've never seen such fighting on any party or any chamber. Right now, Nancy Mace is threatening to quit. So Elise Stefanik is going after the speaker, saying the most horrible things about his ability to lead, which I don't think are accurate, but I'm a big fan of hers. Then you have a situation where the party can't even get together on an agenda. So everyone's fighting with everyone. And on the Senate side, Rand Paul is in a world of his own. It seems to be siding, everything on the Epstein files to now the Venezuela operation, siding with Democrats. Now, I know you can't have everybody march to the same hymn sheet, but sing to the same hymn sheet, I guess the phrase goes. But I've never seen such bickering. This is the attitude that ousted Kevin McCarthy.
It is, and that is not lost on me. Look, Elise and Mike are both very, very good friends of mine. I love them both. My advice is you have one another's cell phone numbers. I mean, do not fight this out on the front pages of Politico or the New York Times. And I would say, look, I was in the House. I was very frustrated by the fact that the Senate has to get 60 votes. But there are also days I was glad they had to get 60 votes because we were in the minority in the Senate. So this world of communicating via X or social media, you can't do that if you're teammates. We have the gift of governance, Brian. Think about this. You have the House, the Senate, and the White House. You may not have that in 2 years. You likely will not have it. What are you doing with the gift that you currently have? And how would you like to go home and explain to people, hey, this is what we've done with the gift of governance that you gave us? I mean, what do we have to show for it for the last couple of months?
No, I hear you. So I want to pivot, if I can, to Venezuela and going after those boats. And I looked this up as soon as this became a story. How many times did Barack Obama, while you were in the House, drone terrorists, suspected terrorists? He didn't want to put anybody in Gitmo, so he just killed them where they were, including an American. Right. And a lot of times he blew up weddings, and other times he killed innocent civilians. If you're a terrorist with your family, everyone's dying. We accepted that for 8 years. Now we have these drug boats where they're being eyed, and I think they're being taken out, not sure, but I believe they're being taken out by drones. And now people are saying, well, if you don't hit them once, you have to go back and save them. You can't hit them again. You've got a great legal mind. Where did that come from?
Every fact matters, Brian, and that's what sometimes is lost in politics. So every fact matters. The survivors, what were they doing? Were they in communication with other people? Were they trying to secure what was left of the drugs that was not knocked out by the initial strike? I mean, do we know all of those answers? I mean, we live in this world where we want to be first, more so than we want to be accurate. And that is the opposite of the way court works. So here's what I do know. Two of the most principled colleagues that I ever served with are Marco Rubio and John Lee Ratcliffe. Two of the most principled people. Forget about politics. Two of the most principled people I know. So I know that you work closely with Pete. I don't know Pete as well, but I know those two guys. And John's got a daughter serving in the military. And I'm sorry if I outed that, if that's a family secret, but this is personal with them. So the notion that they would be part of some war crime, look, you got to be really careful when you throw that around. And if you don't have all the facts, and guess what? I bet they don't. I bet they don't have all the facts. It used to be that the military was above politics. That politics kind of ended when it dealt with military. I mean, do we know how many people were killed with the Iranian nuclear strikes? I mean, do we? I don't know. You might know.
No.
But people view that as successful. So what's different off the coast of Venezuela? Why is, I mean, look, we may be doing drone strikes that you and I have no idea what's going on with terrorist groups in the Middle East. I mean, are we okay with that? I need to know all the facts. Look, Americans do treat their enemies better than their enemies treat them. That is a given. And we do try to abide by international treaties, even when those governing bodies aren't fair to us. I mean, for Pete's sake, there's an arrest warrant out for Benjamin Netanyahu. So how seriously can you take some of these groups? Having said that, when I don't have all the facts, I try not to render a verdict.
Right. And then when they go and get briefed and they're all convinced and they go out to the cameras and say something different, Dave Ignatius, a clear-thinking guy, usually on MSNBC from the Washington Post, but man, does he have international connections and a knowledge of war. Cut 40.
We have Congressman Jim Himes, the ranking member in the House Intelligence Committee, say it's one of the most troubling things he's ever said, and his counterpart, the Republican, Langford, saying it was highly professional. Senator Tom Cotton, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, saying it was righteous. So we're back to the same kind of partisan divide, I want to say partisan mess. And that's really unfortunate because this issue raises what really is a classic in the literature about use of force. During World War II, you'd have German submarines sinking shipping, and the question was, what do you do about the survivors? Do you go rescue them? Do you go rescue them if you're at risk? And there's extensive discussion by lawyers, thoughtful people at the time about what morality requires you to do in wartime. That kind of debate is what we need to be having now, and instead it's beginning to be the usual sharp disagreement between Republicans and Democrats, almost reflexive. And if this moment is wasted for a real discussion, we'll all be the worse for it.
And I could just interject. I would not say that these drug boats are like supply chain ships. Those ships in World War II, those merchant ships were carrying goods. Where these other boats have one thing: go as fast as you can to the closest Caribbean island full of drugs. No one denies they're drug ships. But having said that, this is the way you should be approaching this.
Yeah, and I would also add the number one cause of death among young Americans, not guns and not car accidents, it is fentanyl. So you can certainly argue that it is self-defense. Yeah. This is what gives me pause. Jim Himes was among the more reasonable people that I served on the House Intel Committee with. James Langford is one of the best people you will ever meet in life. If I could get the two of them together, I would sit them down together and say, all right, tell me what you're seeing. But we don't do that anymore, Brian. We go run to our respective television cameras. I will give credit to Himes. He's willing to go on Fox. I assume James is willing to go on enemy territory, too. But I'd love to have them both in the room or on your show, right, or on your show, One Nation, and say, okay, you guys are both decent people. How do y'all see this differently?
Well, put it this way. Jim Himes said they were shipwrecked. Shipwrecked? What are they, is this a skipper in Marianne?
I disagree with his phraseology.
Yes.
That is not a shipwreck, Jim.
Are you kidding me?
But I will say this. Jim Himes, in an open committee, I told him that something Democrats were doing was unfair, and he did something I've never seen a Democrat do other than Peter Welch. In an open hearing, he said, you're right. What we just said was unfair. So that is the Jim Himes I served with. Now, when you get elevated, when you're in a leadership position, things change, Brian. People expect you. Jim Himes is more likely to get a primary from the left than he is to be beat in a general election. So I don't know how much of this is politics. I don't know how much of it is, reflexively we have to criticize the other side.
Right.
When it comes to war, war crimes is a really serious accusation, like treason. You don't hear me accuse people of treason, Brian, because you can get put to death for that. We got to be careful how we phrase things. John Lee Ratcliffe is not going to commit a war crime, period, full stop.
I'll tell you, everyone sounds so impressive when you use their middle name. I should have, years ago, dedicated myself to my middle name. I would sound more impressive. You keep using his middle name, and I even like him more. So do you know who's on your show Sunday?
I do. We got Trish McLaughlin. We got some members of the House and Senate. I'm trying to get somebody to explain the Lane Kiffin thing to me if I could. I don't have your contacts in the sports world. I don't get leaving a playoff team, Brian. I don't get that. So whoever doesn't make the cut for your roster is usually who I get on my show.
Oh, yes.
But yes, I've been working on it this morning. It's going to be a good lead-in for One Nation with Brian Kilmeade.
It always is. It's always fantastic, and it's always deep thoughts at the end or questions from the people to Trey Gowdy at the end, which is fantastic.
I love.
Right. And by the way, I've never been more jealous of not to be in South Carolina where you do your show than now, because in December, it feels like mid-February. We had Ron DeSantis on the couch today. He couldn't even recover from it because it's like in 20 degrees. So I'm jealous of your climate.
I got to go turn the air conditioning on, Brian. I'm actually a little warm right now. But I will say this. Why don't you move down here? We would love to have you down here.
Listen, I've talked to your people. They say visit but promise to leave. That is the message in South Carolina. You're tired of the Yankees coming down, I heard.
We want, yeah, but you're a good Yankee.
Oh, okay.
We want you down here.
I'm the Jeter of Yankee tourists.
We would love to have you down here.
All right, Trey, I'm going to take that to the bank, into the Chamber of Commerce, and I might make my move. Sir. I'm going to watch 9 o'clock Eastern time Sunday night. Trey Gowdy, thanks so much.
God bless you, Brian. Take care.
All right, stay within yourself, Trey. Back in a moment.
You go one way or the other, and we're going to go the wrong way if we keep taking in garbage into our country. Ilhan Omar is garbage. She's garbage. Her friends are garbage. These aren't people that work. These aren't people that say, let's go, come on, let's make this place great. These are people that do nothing but complain. They complain. And from where they came from, they got nothing.
So he's talking about Somalia, and he's talking about the Somali community inside Minneapolis, mostly Minnesota. It's the largest one of the country. And we also know this huge burgeoning scandal where they've been bilking. Most of them are Somalis. I mean, 79 of the 84 indictments are Somalis. 52 of the convictions, almost all are Somalis. And it looks systematic. And the money might, in fact, be going back to Somalia, to al-Shabaab, their al-Qaeda affiliate. So if that, indeed, that's the Chris Rufo connection that he talked about last week that is being pursued now by the Treasury Department. And the president is fed up. She's fed up with people like Ilhan Omar who do nothing but complain, who raise kids that have take part in anti-Semitic protests at Columbia, who just whine about this country instead of trying to make it better. And by the way, one of her staffers is indicted, and a restaurant that she has an affiliation with is right in the middle of it, stealing tens of millions of dollars. So this is going to get a lot bigger. But is the president language helpful? His directness. Let's bring in Ben Shapiro, Daily Wire co-founder, host of The Ben Shapiro Show, #1 New York Times bestselling author. His latest book is Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. Hey, Ben, welcome. Your thoughts about the president's approach and now banning immigration from, I think, 19 to 20 countries.
I mean, on policy, there's no question he's correct. I mean, the fact is that we cannot vet people who are coming in from countries that effectively have no government. And not only do they have no government, what government they do have is very often complicit in actual terrorism, especially when you're talking about a place like Somalia, where something like 35% of its entire economy is remittances from the United States, which is totally insane. And so what the president is doing by saying we can't have mass migration from areas where people don't hold anything in common with us, generally hate American values, have no love for the American Constitution. I don't even see what's remotely controversial about that part of it. Obviously, the president uses the president's language. And anybody who's shocked at President Trump's language after a decade of President Trump, I think, get over it. Like, honestly, we're now 10 years into this. And on the list of insults, this comes up very short.
So, this thing's going to get big. Keith Ellison, who was a terrible congressman and a horrible attorney general, but the people of Minneapolis seem to like him, is defending Governor Walz's responses to the fraud that's going to be over $1 billion. And with the stuff the programs they took from autistic programs, from poor people, from these food programs, some of which Ilhan Omar sponsored and got federal funding for. So this is going to be really big. Where do you think this goes as the federal government gets involved?
Well, I mean, obviously, the investigations are probably going to grow from here. My guess is that's only the beginning. I think that probably there's more there than they've even uncovered so far. One of the funnier articles I saw, there was an ABC affiliate that came out this morning talking about the benefits of mass Somali migration into Minnesota and pointing out that the total income of Somali Minnesotans was $500 million last year. Well, I noticed that $500 million as a total income is half of what was built from the federal government just in the cases that have already been uncovered. So if what we're talking about is the great enrichment that has happened due to mass migration, and the best you can come up with is an income that amounts to half of the fraud committed by this small group of Somalis, then I'm not sure exactly what case it is that you're making at this point. Again, this is not to malign every single person who's coming from Somalia, because whenever you have a group of people, I'm sure there are great individuals that exist within a broader spectrum of human beings. And, when the president says garbage, I think, by the way, in that quote, he seems to be talking specifically about Ilhan Omar, who I also agree is a trash human being. I think she has horrible beliefs. I think that she stands for horrible things. And then he says, and her friends, I don't know that he's necessarily referring to every single Somali person in the United States. He may be referring to people who are politically affiliated, or he may be referring to her actual specific friends, some of whom seem to be caught up in the actual fraud welfare scheme here.
Including one of her staffers that's involved. And one of these restaurant owners who owns a Safari Inn has 35 tables, but yet he claims he's gotten reimbursed for 18,000 meals. Well, he's got a multi-million-dollar mansion. I mean, are we kidding? And guess what?
He's spending $9,000 a month at Nordstrom.
Yeah.
That's a lot of, I hope he dresses well. That's a lot of clothes. $9,000 a month. Whoa.
So Ben, I'm going to add something to this. So if you actually bilk out of this money, There's now a phone call that I understand that the Attorney General Ellison has, where some of these people involved in the fraud pledge campaign contributions, which he eventually collects from these people. They also did the threatening. You talk about full circle of, if you come down on me, I'm going to hit you with the racism and bias claims, which backs out these politicians who need the 80,000 member Somali committee or community to vote for them.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, obviously, every politician has to answer to constituents. And so when you have Keith Ellison basically, garnering campaign contributions from many of the same people who are associated with this sort of activity and saying, I'm going to be your guy. I mean, I'm not sure how that isn't a scandal. I think Tim Walz obviously is a scandal. I think Ilhan Omar obviously is a scandal. It's hard to see how fraud perpetrated at this great a scale was unknown by everyone in a position of power, especially people who are extremely close to the communities in question.
Ben, not that you should be surprised. That's why you started the Daily Wire. But they looked at the networks and say how much coverage this has gotten. Zero. I know the nightly news. I mean, zero. How could that not be $1 billion gone from a state like Minnesota? But I want to talk about also what's going on with the anti-Semitism. I spoke at a Jewish conference last night, and the isolation that the Jewish community feels, especially in New York City, is beyond comprehension, especially with the election of this mayor. And there's some studies that are really disturbing. Nearly 4 in 10 of the current GOP, 37%, believe the Holocaust was exaggerated and did not happen as history described. By the way, I met a Holocaust survivor last night, 96 years old. He told me it happened. Who would have thought? Younger men are especially likely to hold this view. 54% of men under 30, 39% of women under 50. Among men over 50, 41% agree, compare with 18% of women over 50. How did that happen? How does this happen, Ben?
Well, I do think that one of the things that poll from Manhattan Institute is really fascinating, because it sort of breaks down traditional GOP and then people who are sort of new GOP voters in 2024. And what it shows is that the traditional GOP is significantly less likely to believe the sort of conspiratorial or anti-Semitic nonsense. A lot of new GOP are more likely to believe it, mainly because they were alienated by the Democratic Party, but not necessarily because they hold traditional sort of conservative views. And it does show that whenever you have an electoral coalition, there are a lot of people inside that electoral coalition, but the coalition is defined by its leadership. Are the leaders willing to say true things? Are the leaders willing to call out actual bad beliefs? Are they willing to call out the purveyors of those actual bad beliefs? Because, listen, no political leader should be expected to condemn every single person who's voting for them. But if the question is who defines the future of the coalition, who defines the belief system by which the coalition rides together, that really does come down to a question of leadership. And I think that leadership has been in some quarters not present, particularly in the online space. It has been very much not present. And let's be clear that on X and TikTok, this sort of stuff goes viral very, very quickly.
Yes, and maybe disproportionately. We get the theory that maybe too many people think that way. But let's just amp this up. It's very commonplace, and it is total truth to say that the Democrats have a huge problem, and they'll admit it with the so-called socialist wing of the party that's growing. Got it. Like that left-wing lunatic who ran in the 7th District of Tennessee. I understand it. And then they got other people that are looked at as moderates, the Spambergers, the Joe Manchins, who's not in politics anymore. I got it. And Fetterman, to me, seems to speak what I would hope be the future of that party, but he's the minority of that party. That's the fracture we like to dissect. But in your estimation, do the Republicans have a problem with the extreme right that says, you know what, Israel, they're way too over the top. We're way too close to them. Russia, they're just misunderstood. We shouldn't be involved. Venezuela, not our problem. Why are we worried about that? Do you think that divide on the Republican side presents this same quantitative problem as the Democrats have?
So I think that there is a massive quantitative problem on the Republican side. I don't think it's about disagreements over Israel policy or Venezuela policy or even Ukraine policy. I think it has to do with something deeper. And that is, I think there's a wing of the Republican Party that is rejecting the basic promise of meritocracy, which used to be sort of the root of the conservative agenda. The root of the conservative agenda was the idea that we have constitutional checks and balances in order to preserve God-given freedoms that allow us to rise or fall on our own merits. That was basically the promise of the United States. And there is a side of the right that has decided that the meritocracy is actually a lie, and that what we actually need to do is target a so-called globalist elite who are manipulating the system to their own ends. That tends to cross over with conspiratorial views, particularly about Jews, but it tends to cross over with other sort of conspiratorial views in general, which is something you've seen growing inside the Republican Party. That same poll shows that there are a huge number of Republicans who believe in conspiracy theories about 9/11 or even the moon landing. And that sort of thing, I think, again, goes to a grievance-based politics that used to be more foreign to the conservative coalition, but definitely has been growing in recent years. I know why it's been growing. I mean, the reason it's been growing is because if the left continues to say for years and years and years that white Christian men are bad, particularly, then there will be a reactionary response to that by saying, okay, we've been victimized. The system has been constructed in order to put us down. But that response shouldn't be to destroy all systems, or that capitalism is bad, or free markets are bad, or freedom of thought is bad, or that America historically is bad. The response should be meritocracy. Unfortunately, very often it isn't, and it's a sort of grievance-based politics that looks more left than right.
Well, that's a theory, Ben. I mean, that's a deep theory. The other thing is people doing it for clicks. Well, what if I did a show and I interview a World War II historian that says Hitler was misunderstood, that we never really should have got involved, that Winston Churchill was more of a problem. He was just going to take Czechoslovakia and maybe a little of Poland, and that was it. We way overreacted, never should have dropped the bombs on Japan. So what if you have somebody that says Building Number 7 was an inside job and their name wasn't Rosie O'Donnell, that 9/11 was an inside job? Of course, everybody knew it, and they talk about everybody involved in it. What if that same group said, wait, a man popped out of a pothole cover and shot Charlie Kirk, not somebody from the roof? So I don't know if there's a school of thought there, or if someone's just trying to outdo each other with sensational claims.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's both. It's all of the above. It's definitely a clickbait thing. It's definitely, very viral online. All of that is definitely true. I think there is an ideological aversion to, again, basic American principles with some of these folks that really amounts to a great demoralization, an attempt to demoralize all Americans. Everything you've been told is a lie. Everything about America that you've ever been told is untrue. America itself is rotten to the core, and only I, the conspiracy theorist or the person who's laying out this new vision or no vision, only I am the real spirit guide for you who can illuminate all of the secrets that have been hidden from. That's why your life isn't what you want it to be, is because no one has told you the truth, but I'm here to tell you the truth. Now, the problem, of course, is that it's not the truth, and all of these lies are going to make your life markedly worse. But it's kind of sexy to believe that the reason that your life isn't what you want it to be is because of conspiratorial forces beyond your control. And if only you could see past the curtain, then magically your life would be fixed.
So, I mean, I look at your success. You got it. You made your success online. You formed your own company. Everybody knows it, but you don't say anything sensational. These are just your opinions. They're conservative thought. What's in the conservative school of thought? There's always debate. Rush Limbaugh didn't change his delivery or his statements in order to remain number one. He just was consistent. As issues came up, he knew exactly what he was going to dig into, and he quickly knew his opinion. So would Rush Limbaugh recognize the right now?
I think it'd be very difficult for him to recognize at least some segments of the right. I don't want to say it's the entire right, because it isn't. I think a huge percentage of the Trump right doesn't believe a lot of this nonsense, and all the numbers that we're citing, except for some of the young men numbers, are minority numbers. But I will say that, yes, I mean, let's put it this way, Brian, if I went back 10 years and I looked at the stuff that you were saying, it looks exactly the same as the stuff that you're saying now. Nobody has ever asked, what happened to Brian Kilmeade, right? Nobody who's looked at the course of my career, I've been writing syndicated columns since I was 17, I'm now 41. Nobody would look at anything that I've said and said, what happened to how did Ben Shapiro change? But there are an enormous number of quite powerful influencers, and that question is being asked about them all the time. What happened to this person? What changed for this person? And if this person is radically changing their opinion on a dime and seems to be gaining virality for it, you do have to ask, the question about whether they're chasing virality or on what basis they've changed their opinion.
All right, so let me bring it to practical politics. You, Donald Trump. You had your arms wrapped around everybody. A lot of people, I thought you'd agree, a lot of people on Fox, a lot of people who do the podcast. And now all of a sudden, those people are fighting with each other. And you need every single vote to keep the House and the Senate, practically. And then you got this 2028 where you have to have a nominee that's going to have to find a way possibly to be all things to all people or just pick a side. What responsibilities do the people in power have now on their own party? You could say that for Democrats, but let's just focus on Republicans now.
I think Republicans have tremendous responsibility to define what the party looks like going forward, because if they don't, then leaders? I think the people, yes, the leaders, absolutely. I also think that it's not worthwhile fighting yesterday's war, meaning that J.D. Vance's coalition is not going to be identical to Donald Trump's coalition because it doesn't work that way. Hillary Clinton's coalition was not identical to Barack Obama. She thought it would be, and that's why she lost. And if Republicans continue to think that every single voter who voted for Donald Trump is just going to translate right over, so if you just say nothing, if you just kind of hover across the top of these controversial issues, that you will be able to keep everybody in your warm embrace. Donald Trump is a unique sui generis figure who's able to encompass multitudes. That is not true of any other Republican in the field, period. End of story. And so, I wish that President Trump would do it himself, but if President Trump won't do it, then I wish other politicians would say, here is what my conservatism looks like. And more importantly, here is what conservatism does not look like. And here is what can't define the party going forward.
Ted Cruz is. I want you to hear Hillary Clinton because she seems equally dismayed in a way. Listen.
Smart, well-educated young people from our own country, from around the world, where were they getting their information? They were getting their information from social media, particularly TikTok.
And which he was referring to as her Columbia students' anti-Semitic views. And he doesn't understand they had no perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian disagreements at all. Just 30 seconds, your thoughts on what she just said.
I mean, that's the worst person you know meme is right? When Hillary Clinton, broken clock being correct twice a day, this is the twice a day. I mean, obviously the social media algorithms are rotting people's minds. And what I've said to people is, you want to know what Americans really think? Get outside, touch some grass, spend less time on TikTok and on X, and actually go to church and talk with your fellow Americans a little bit. You'll find that the nutty beliefs are significantly less prevalent and important than you believe they are.
All right, Ben, hang in there. Ben Shapiro, go get his book for this holiday season, Lions and Scavengers, and check him out on the Daily Wire all the time. Ben, thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
But with us right now is two guys who put together a book that's #1 on Amazon top 10 list. David Shedd and Andrew Badger, co-authors of The Great Heist, China's epic campaign to steal America's secrets. And I can let out another secret, and that's you'll be on One Nation Sunday night at 10 o'clock. You all right if I give that secret out?
Please give that out.
All right. So, David, let's start with you. Can we just go through, first off, the background in China? When did you first become aware of what they were capable of?
Look, having worked this target during the 1990s, it was pretty clear to me that China was on the ascendancy, especially after 1986, when Deng Xiaoping laid out this plan in order to bring together the sort of controlled capitalism around the whole issue of the socialist authoritarian government of the Chinese Communist Party. But it really took off, and it was very personal in 2015 when about 22 million files from our security backgrounds were stolen out of the Office of Personnel and Management in May of 2015. Subsequently, 2 years later, Equifax, one of the 3 largest credit bureaus in the United States, had all their data stolen on 145 million people. And then you have a plethora of cyber attacks on our healthcare system in terms of privacy data. And that it was a wake-up call under Made in China 2025, which was launched by Xi Jinping in 2015. And that's really when I...
Right. And David, I should give people your background. Former director and acting director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, chief of staff for the Director of National Intelligence, and National Security Council senior director, special assistant to the President for Intelligence under George W. Bush. Now, Andrew, you're an intel analyst. You spent 2 decades serving as DIA case officer, strategic risk advisor over at McKinsey. Oh, you went to Harvard, but you have to overcome that yourself. Exactly. I can't help you. All right. So first off, so you two have a real concern as very patriotic Americans, and you feel as though, in a way, I get the sense that America's not fully aware of how bad this is.
Definitely not. This is the largest heist or the theft of secrets in history. And the consequence of that is changed the global balance of power. Now China is dominating these frontier emerging markets, these critical technologies. They're the superpower for innovation right now.
But they didn't earn it. They stole it.
And that's exactly the point of our book, is showing that it's not just because China has a command and control economy. It's not just because they have 1.3 billion people and this massive economy scale. The speed at which China has now become the preeminent technology superpower is because they literally stole these secrets from America, from the West, from all of our years of research and development. One thumb drive into the computer, boom, it's gone. China benefits from it.
Give me an idea, David, of what they've taken.
So, for example, for Tesla in 2019, as Elon Musk was breaking ground in Shanghai for the production and the gigafactory of Teslas that a year later would be producing 300,000 Teslas in China. Mr. Cao, 3 days earlier, is removing $1 billion of source code on the driverless cars that today are part of BYD, the Chinese leading manufacturer of EVs.
Which everyone says is a great car, but you're saying they stole the technology.
For the driverless portion.
For the driverless portion. But by the way, they stole the technology for the driverless portion from Elon Musk. Does he know it?
Absolutely. And he responded by going to the FBI about the issue, but too little too late. It had already occurred.
And he made the choice to build there.
Exactly. And he cut a deal in which once it's in Chinese territory, the Chinese government, through again this Ministry of State Security, which is the CIA, FBI, NSA, cybersecurity, and cyber command, is the organization that then pulls that out and carries out the requirements of the Chinese Communist Party.
But they also took our F-35, right?
They certainly did. And with that, then they create the FC-31, which is a near mock-up of the same thing as the F-35, costing Northrop Grumman $100 million to do damage repair on what was taken out of it.
Andrew, don't we realize, I mean, these are people, this is all you do for a living. You're working on the F-35. Aren't you thinking as much as I want innovation, but I want security with it? Were we not aware of how good they were at it, or did we just leave the back door open?
There's just been this hubris from the United States that China can't compete with us. They're this third-rate agrarian power, and then they're never going to compete with us. So actually, Elon Musk, he was warned, hey, if you set up this factory in China, they're going to steal your code. And he said, don't worry about that. We'll outcompete them. We'll out-innovate them. At the time, Tesla was the superpower in terms of the EV market. Now BYD, China's EV company, has overpassed Tesla. And so this is this shock value that the United States, we've overlooked this threat for many years, and now it's coming home, and now we're seeing the consequences of it. China just held a Victory Day parade in September. We had the leaders of the Axis of Resistance, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and China had this,
and India, by the way.
And India, and this parade down Chang'an Avenue, which is their Times Square, and they were showing off all their latest military equipment, and it's some of the best in the world. Their hypersonic missiles, their stealth technology, their AI-enabled underwater submarines, which could all be used against the American military. All of that can ultimately be traced to, in part, being stolen from the United States. So we have a peer power who's now competing against us, who stole all of our IP and technology, and now they're turning that weapon back towards us.
And the hypersonics, were they taken from us too?
So the hypersonics are absolutely critical. So Los Alamos, which is our lab in New Mexico, this is the frontier of American innovation in terms of our defense technology. You might remember it from the Manhattan Project, where we developed the atomic weapon, and which was stolen by the Soviets. We had an advanced hypersonic program there and a leading scientist who left the Los Alamos hypersonics program, went back to China, and created what Chinese called the Los Alamos Club. He recruited almost 160 people who worked in Los Alamos in some of the most cutting-edge hypersonic technology, and they took all of that back to China. Where are we today? China is now beating us in terms of hypersonic technology. They have nuclear-enabled cruise missiles that are hypersonic, which means they can move super fast, Mach 5, Mach 7, and they can maneuver in the air. So our air defenses can't shoot them down, and now those cruise missiles can reach the United States. So we've seen all of our research and development on this critical technology. The scientists come here, take our R&D, go back to China, and then give it to the Chinese military. And now we're at a strategic disadvantage.
And in May 2021, they tested their hypersonics, and it landed within 25 miles of its target. That is something the United States has not been able to accomplish. So we know that they're ahead of us on the hypersonics program. And just to be clear for your audience, they didn't steal a hypersonics package. They stole the know-how associated with wind tunneling, high-grade materials at high heat and speed, and all of that out of Los Alamos, the knowledge. So it wasn't, no one walked off with a hypersonics package.
It's maddening. An excerpt from your book, how China isn't one of the top threats, it is the top threat. You write, No doubt, cheap labor indeed played a role in China's economic surge. So did favorable trade terms and massive infrastructure investments guided by top-down, long-term state planning. But none of these variables explains the speed at which Beijing has closed the gap with America in sensitive sectors. The leap was powered in significant part by what can be described as an epic level of state-sponsored espionage. China's espionage activity against the United States far outweigh that of any other nation, including Russia. And then you say they've made it another step. They said they've embedded in our infrastructure so they could shut off our water and shut off our power. Do you want to explain that, David?
Well, certainly the
I'm sorry, Andrew. Yeah,
Andrew, you can take it in terms of the typhoon attacks.
Exactly. So this great heist, this theft of all of our secrets, has laid the foundation for what we call phase zero. So China has embedded all of these critical malware into our critical infrastructure. Think water systems, think your electric grid, think your ports, think your air tower system. And what they've done is they've identified the weak points in there, embedded these malware. And the moment that a war between the United States and China kicks off, for example, if China were to invade Taiwan, for the United States to respond, they would all unleash all of that chaos.
You think in a pre-invasion
so it's shaping
hit us.
Before phase zero is shaping the battlefield environment before the actual kinetic conflict. And their goal is to create psychological panic. And their hope is that by manipulating that panic in the United States, I mean, imagine the telecom systems goes down. Imagine your water doesn't come out anymore. Imagine your electric grid goes down. That's going to create mass psychological panic in the United States. And their hope is then to use that against us and say, don't come to Taiwan, don't fight us, because we can hit you hard in the U.S. homeland.
And we know they have the lasing technology into space.
The what?
Lasing.
Okay.
Capability to take out our GPS as well.
Our satellite system.
And so for our satellite system.
But they'd have to do it one at a time, wouldn't they?
No, not necessarily.
It's likely this would be a mass coordinated attack. Yeah. So they would attack our satellites, but then they would also unleash this malware into our infrastructure.
Right.
And the part, again, about our book is that they laid this foundation through decades of theft. So they've been mapping our systems. They've been embedding into our systems. They've been understanding our weak points, our vulnerabilities. They've been stealing our secrets. And now they have the potential to not just steal secrets, but launch a kinetic effect.
All right, when we come back, does the government know about this? What can they do about it? Are we doing the same to them? And what is their obsession with Taiwan? Why is it such a threat, this small island just off their coast? David Shedd is here. Andrew Badger is here. Their book is doing great. It's out this week. It's called The Great Heist, China's Epic Campaign to Steal America's Secrets. I wish it wasn't true, but we need to all read this book and find out, sadly, that it is. Don't move. We're back. David Shedd is here. Andrew Badger's here. Their best-selling book, The Great Heist, is out. China's epic campaign to steal America's secrets. And Andrew, let me start with you. What is the Chinese obsession with Taiwan? Why would they worry about Taiwan? I mean, they got so many other challenges. They want to take us on. They're stealing all our stuff. Why do they need to bring them in like they did Hong Kong?
There's a significant historical and cultural attachment to Taiwan. I mean, imagine if a part of the United States had broken off, say, Texas. We'd obviously have that deep desire to reclaim what we see as our divine territory, as our manifest destiny and respect. But there's also significant geopolitical advantages. Taiwan was described by General MacArthur, I believe, as a sitting aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific. And it sits right at a critical junction point where all the trade routes for our allies, Japan and South Korea, all pass by Taiwan. So if the Chinese conquer Taiwan, it's not just going to be a huge PR victory for the Communist Party, but it'll provide them strategic leverage over some of our most critical allies. And it's personally critical for Xi Jinping's personal own legacy.
David, the other thing is, when you see a thriving capitalistic democracy in Taiwan and the quality of life that they have in that small island, do you think that they hate that the Chinese people in mainland China see the quality of life they have in Taiwan and the freedom that they're able to enjoy?
What's interesting is that business drives so many of the relationships between the mainland and Taiwan. And so that there are many from the mainland, and I'm talking about the non-People's Liberation Army side of things and the Chinese Communist Party, which is really only about 80 million strong out of 1.4 billion people, is that the relationship with the Taiwan citizens is very fluid in both directions. It accounts for about 30 to 35% of the economic trade between both countries. And so there are many in Shanghai and Beijing and Guangzhou that are very attracted to the kind of relationship that exists today. Because again, there has been a growth in mainland China of the middle class that sees business as business.
What should our listeners know, that what could we do right now? And you're going to be going to government, you're going to be briefing the China Select Committee on China, and they've reached out to you and they've noticed how great your book is, The Great Heist, and how valuable it is. What are some of the things you'd recommend we do right now?
I think the first thing, right, is we have to identify what are our crown jewels of the 21st century technology. What are our most important critical technologies that we have to protect? First among them is AI, right? Artificial intelligence is going to transform not only economic power, but military power. AI can be embedded into missiles.
So these are private companies, though.
These are private companies.
We
have to bridge, the most fundamental step is we have to bridge that gap between the public and private sector. And most importantly, reframe how we think about economic security. In America, we're separate. We have the private sector, we have government. China has no private sector government. It's all civil military fusion. Everything's blended together. We have to kind of start thinking about how do we protect our economic security, and we have to think economic security is national security.
Right, so I got that. What else would you recommend?
So when I think back to how my career developed, starting with the Soviet Union in 1982 when I joined CIA, we operated under the National Security Act of 1947, which was the structure in which the U.S. government looked at national security matters in what now, 80 years ago, you would say be a very traditional form. We advocate for creating a National Economic Security Council within the White House under the president ultimately, but really shared by the vice president, that brings private sector and government, because this is part of our industrial base. The other thing, we need to strengthen and harden our perimeters in the cybersecurity arena in major ways around these protected
We don't have a director of cybersecurity right now in the government. I think that job is open.
It's hard to believe that you have that vacancy in place on something that is so absolutely critical for America in terms of driving that. The other thing, we need legal reform, because the bar is so high on prosecuting these individuals that are involved in economic espionage that many of the companies simply give up. And we need to understand that this is about our national security, back to the National Security Act of 1947.
Right.
So those are several elements. We have 7 pillars that are defined in the book and laid out in the epilogue of the book on steps that you can materially take to enhance this. And by the way, they completely jive, they completely comport with the special committee that's looking at this in terms of that. There isn't any conflict in terms of our recommendations. And the beautiful thing is we finally found something that's bipartisan.
And I was going to say that.
I rarely hear people stick up for China. I mean,
how can you?
I know. But I mean, I always thought we could see who the bad guy was between Russia and Ukraine, but some people are confused by that.
But we do need stronger bipartisan support. So to give you one example, in 2018, President Trump on the Department of Justice set up what's called the China Initiative. So this was a special task force. We're going to go after this China threat. We're going to finally stop them from stealing all of our technology. One of the scalps they arrested a Harvard professor who was a nanotechnology expert. They prosecuted him. So they were having success. Joe Biden shut down that initiative because they were afraid of political correctness. I mean, we were allowing our enemy to steal our secrets, and we shut it down because we were scared of offending people. We spoke to a DOJ insider for our book who was part of that program. He said they did a review. They found no trace of any type of discrimination or what have you. And that program has been shut down since then. We need Democrats and Republicans to support that, and we need to start taking this as serious as it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that. Number one, the President Trump saw the threat with the Chinese students. Yeah. You say there's 280,000 here. He's like, let's bring 600,000. It's money, and these institutions need it. But there's a problem, especially you say with these students who get to higher education. They keep their families back there, and they essentially, if they don't want to spy for them, they extort them to say your family's going to pay the price, right?
So the national intelligence law that was passed in 2017 requires, this is in China, requires that every Chinese citizen, whether they're living in China or outside anywhere in the world, or any Chinese business entity, to cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party. And so what you have is this, as the old adage goes, we have our ways. There's that you can cooperate in a manner that is of so-called free will, or we will force that, and they bring the families into the police station and all the rest when they want to do that.
Right, and yet we have to coexist in the meantime while doing everything we can to get rare earth, be responsible ourselves, because they have us over a barrel on that.
Exactly right.
All right, so congratulations, guys, on the book. David Shedd and Andrew Badger. The Great Heist is out, China's epic campaign to steal America's secrets, and we'll see you Sunday at 10 o'clock. All right, thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.